The women of the West are miserable because we've told them to suppress how they are made by God. We should tell them to stop freezing their eggs and start finding their partner earlier and have lots of babies.
It's the week before my university exams right now, and I'm standing here explaining the basic methodology behind survey collection in sociology, which you don't even think is a real subject, to Charlie Kirk. If I took one of those surveys right now, I'd check extremely miserable, but so would a Palestinian child who's been torn to smithereens. How are we going to measure?
You would say extremely miserable?
No, I'm kind of making a joke.
Okay, good. So we agree.
Absolutely,
we actually have
agree on many things.
Then we should shut off Muslim immigration to the UK, right? We totally agree.
I think that all religious fundamentalism is bad, and if you take that logic, we should also not allow evangelical Christians into the UK either.
Well, hold on. So hold on a second. Hold on. That's funny. Hold on.
There it is. The exact moment, well, one among many, that a Cambridge student body slammed the supposed conservative master debater. But I'm getting ahead of myself.
Does tearing down statues correspond to some kind of smiles per capita data set that I wasn't aware of?
Again, it's a little bit of a one-liner.
Why hello, my fellow apes. I hope you are well. Charlie Kirk, the founder of Turning Point USA, has, like so many other prominent conservative voices, built his entire brand on destroying college liberals in debates, churning out endless viral clips of himself owning unprepared students on American campuses. Which is precisely why flying across the pond to debate students at Cambridge University was such a spectacular mistake. Now, you might recall our previous episode where we watched another Cambridge student joust with Charlie over homosexuality.
How did that work out for them?
It worked out perfectly fine. It was an accepted norm of society.
Okay, I still think it's wrong.
Well, we're going back to the same event because there's another exchange that very much deserves our attention. Truly, you are going to see one of the oldest tactics in philosophy applied extremely successfully again and again and again. The topic is the role of women in society, and the student is Tilly Middlehurst, who didn't just debate Charlie, she took him to school.
It's the week before my university exams right now, and I'm standing here explaining the basic methodology behind survey collection in sociology, which you don't even think is a real subject, to Charlie Kirk.
We're going to go through their exchange chronologically, identifying every fallacy, every rhetorical trick, every desperate pivot, and we'll see how someone who actually understands logic can dismantle years of practice talking points with nothing more than clear thinking, sharp wit, and one particular extremely effective technique. So strap in, because this is gonna be beautiful.
So I'm a feminist. My question is about the role of women, though. What should women's role in public and private life look like, and what are the material benefits of that?
Well, thank you for that. Can I take it? I don't even want to take this detour, but can we both agree on what a woman is?
Okay, so I appreciate that we're only 2 sentences into this exchange, but there's already so much to unpack, especially considering that it's going to come up many times throughout. You see, Charlie, like many popular conservative speakers, has a handful of rhetorical traps loaded and ready to spring. These aren't random diversions, they're carefully selected topics designed to shift the battlefield to more favourable terrain. And whenever any conversation even tangentially relates to women, gender, or feminism, they immediately try to steer it towards one specific trap. Can you define what a woman is?
What is a woman?
What is a woman?
What is a woman?
What is a woman?
This is what's known as a red herring, when someone introduces an unrelated point to distract from the original issue. But it's a particularly clever red herring because of how it functions strategically. I mean, think about what's happening here. Tilly's asking a question about women's role in society.
What should women's role in public and private life look like, and what are the material benefits of that?
A question that could lead to Charlie having to defend some genuinely controversial positions. Should women prioritize careers or family? Should they even have the ability to have a career? What about mandatory parental leave or pay gap legislation? These are areas where conservative positions often amount to stripping away rights and opportunities from women, and because of this, they're not exactly popular. This is dangerous territory for Charlie. But the question, what is a woman?
Can we both agree on what a woman is?
Now, that is safe ground. It's a definitional debate that most people haven't spent time thinking about, and it gets into linguistics and the philosophy of language. So it makes the conservative speaker look philosophical and rigorous while making their opponent appear confused about basic concepts. Never mind that the definition of woman has absolutely nothing to do with whether we should have universal healthcare, equal pay legislation, or what role women should have in society. You don't actually need a perfect definition to have these conversations. And the beauty of this trap is in its efficiency. In one swift move, Charlie avoids having to defend positions like women should stay home and have babies, or the pay gap is actually good, and instead, he gets to play philosophy professor, forcing his opponents to navigate complex discussions about biology and gender theory that have absolutely nothing to do with the actual policy question at hand. And notice the transparent disclaimer.
I don't even want to take this detour, but can we both agree on what a woman is?
It's like a pickpocket saying, "I would never steal from you," while his hand is already in your wallet. The disclaimer is part of the distraction technique. He absolutely wants this detour. It's his escape route from having to engage with Tilly's substantive question about material status and social roles.
What should women's role in public and private life look like, and what are the material benefits of that?
But here's what makes Charlie specifically particularly fascinating to watch. Many conservatives who deploy this red herring are actually quite clever about it. They find subtle ways to guide the conversation, dropping breadcrumbs that naturally lead to the "what is a woman" trap. They make it seem organic, like a logical progression of thought. But Charlie, he just crashes through the wall like the Kool-Aid man.
Can we both agree on what a woman is?
No finesse, no subtlety, just "I don't want to take this detour," followed immediately by taking this exact detour.
I don't even want to take this detour.
And it's this inability to hide his rhetorical maneuvers that makes Charlie such an interesting case study. He shows us the tricks without the misdirection, the sleight of hand, performed with all the lights on.
Yes. An
is a
adult
woman?
human female, it's a biological state of being that is also socially experienced. Can I please elucidate just one example of that social experience?
Yeah.
Great start from Tilly here. She gives Charlie exactly what he asked for, a definition, and then immediately steps over his trap. She clearly knows that if she lingers on definitions, they'll spend the next 10 minutes in philosophical weeds about chromosomes and social constructs instead of discussing actual policy. You know, the thing she's actually asked about.
An adult human female, it's a biological state of being that is also socially experienced.
By acknowledging both biological and social aspects, she's given a complete enough answer that Charlie can't claim that she's dodging, while simultaneously driving straight back to her original question about women's role in society.
Can I please elucidate just one example of that social experience?
Yeah, I was going to answer your question, but sure, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So let's say you're a member of a tribe, and that in that tribe, you have the biological female anatomy, and in order to become a woman in that tribe, you have to also get a tattoo. That's a social experience that's mapped onto biological reality.
So can a woman have a prostate?
And this is an abysmal start from Charlie. Tilly just offered a genuinely fascinating anthropological point about how societies layer social expectations onto biological categories. She's illustrating how womanhood isn't purely biological. Different cultures add different requirements, whether it's tattoos, clothing, hairstyles, or rites of passage. It's a sophisticated observation about how gender roles vary across societies while still being connected to biological sex.
And in order to become a woman in that tribe, you have to also get a tattoo. That's a social experience that's mapped onto biological reality.
It's nuanced. But Charlie, he will have none of this complex discussion about cultural practices and social roles. No. While Tilly's exploring how societies construct womanhood, Charlie can't stop thinking about prostates.
So can a woman have a prostate?
But in terms of debate, this is Charlie desperately hammering on his red herring, trying to force Tilly to bite. He's not interested in discussing how societies construct gender roles, which was, remember, her actual question. He wants to talk about trans people and biological essentialism. So no matter what thoughtful point Tilly makes about social experiences, Charlie's going to keep yanking the conversation back to body parts. The repetition,
Can a woman have a prostate? It's super easy. Like, can a woman have a prostate?
shows just how determined he is to make this conversation go where he wants it to go.
Biologically speaking, a woman is an adult human female that has a biological reality, but it's also social experience, right? So I don't...
Yeah, it's super easy. Like, can a woman have a prostate?
So as per my definition of woman, I would say that people who have a prostate are biologically male, but they can sometimes be socially treated as women.
Okay, got it. So women can have prostates. Got it. Okay. So you're a feminist that actually isn't just fighting for women, you're also fighting for men.
And here we see, at least in my opinion, Charlie's true colours. This isn't about understanding or engaging with ideas. It's about manufacturing a gotcha moment for his audience, the type of gotcha that goes viral among his base. You can literally see him grinning, so proud of his little rhetorical trap. And then comes his apparent slam dunk.
So you're a feminist that actually isn't just fighting for women, you're also fighting for men.
The smugness is palpable. He thinks he's already delivered a coup de grace. But here's what makes his gotcha so bizarre. It reveals that Charlie's completely ignorant about what feminism actually is. If he had read literally any feminist theory, he'd know that feminists explicitly fight for men too. They argue that patriarchal systems harm men through toxic masculinity, emotional repression, and rigid gender roles. Feminists believe an egalitarian society benefits everyone. So his big own is essentially, ha! You believe exactly what your movement has always said it believes.
You're also fighting for men.
That's not a win. But then again, it actually is, at least in terms of optics, since much of his core base also doesn't know the first thing about feminism. This is performance, not conversation. From the very moment Tilly said, "I'm a feminist," Charlie's been working towards this predetermined punchline. He's not interested in hearing her thoughtful explanation of how biological and social elements comprise gender.
An adult human female, it's a biological state of being that is also socially experienced.
He's not engaging with her actual question about women's roles in society.
What should women's role in public and private life look like?
He's just waiting for his moment to spring the trap and score points with his base. His grin and the way that he looks towards the audience for approval gives away the game. Again, he's not as subtle as other conservative champions. That's the look of someone who thinks they've just delivered a knockout blow. But all he's really demonstrated is that he's not listening. Tilly has been crystal clear. Biological reality exists and social experience matters. These aren't contradictory ideas, but Charlie needs them to be for his gotcha to work. And here's the crucial thing. Even though Charlie didn't actually get the slam dunk here, he thinks he did. And with conservative audiences, this move is seen as a crushing victory. Look at these confused leftists who can't even define what a woman is. It's easy, but they can't even do it.
You guys are easy.
It's rhetorically powerful because it takes complex discussions about social roles and reduces them to simple biological gotchas. This is precisely why, whenever feminism or gender roles come up, conservatives will desperately try to steer the conversation towards prostates and chromosomes. It's not about understanding, it's about humiliating your enemy, something that Ben Shapiro has said is a good tactic to do.
The only other reason that you should ever have a conversation or be friends with anyone on the left is, and not even be friends, is if you are in public in front of a large audience and then your goal is to humiliate them as badly as possible.
The fact that they're actually discussing something far more nuanced simply gets lost in the performance.
So, yes, men also experience harms from patriarchy, but I argue...
We're talking about the same feminism, though, just make sure. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Again, fighting for men isn't a contradiction of feminism. It's practically a core tenet. Talking of misinformation, finding reliable, unbiased news has become increasingly challenging.
You are fake news.
Headlines compete for our attention, often sacrificing context and nuance for clicks. This is precisely why ground news has become an indispensable tool in my daily routine. Let me show you how it works with a recent major story. Europeans win in UN clash with US over rival Ukraine resolutions. Looking at this story through ground news, I can immediately see that it's been covered by over 200 different sources. What's particularly interesting is the bias distribution. The coverage skews slightly to the left, with 39% left-leaning sources compared to 25% right-leaning ones. Ground news makes this political slant instantly visible. Diving deeper, we can see how different outlets frame the same event with dramatically different headlines and perspectives. Sky News UK, a centre source with high factuality, reports US joins Russia, North Korea and Belarus to vote against UN resolution on Ukraine war. Their subheading explains, 2 motions were passed by the UN today as the world marks the 3rd anniversary of Russia's invasion, with the US voting against one and abstaining on another. The very same story takes on a completely different tone with the Evening Standard, rated as leaning right with high factuality. Their coverage includes charged language, stating US accused of betrayal as it votes alongside Russia and North Korea against UN resolution condemning war. Then there's Salon, a left-leaning source, which frames it as Trump admin refuses to back UN resolution condemning Russian invasion. Their coverage emphasizes political affiliations. There has never been a more crucial time for this comprehensive approach to news consumption. Ground News cuts through the noise, allowing you to see every perspective on important stories and make your own informed judgments. And I'm excited to share that Ground News is offering my audience, you, 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan. Experience this invaluable tool for yourself at ground.news/rationality. If you value balanced, reliable news coverage, I am confident that you'll find Ground News as indispensable as I have. And by signing up through my link, you'll be supporting the channel as well.
Men also experience harm from patriarchal domination, but I would argue that those harms come from that system of domination itself. In the same way, for example, this isn't a threat, but if I reached across and punched you in the face, then my hand might hurt, right? So are we understanding that there are patterns of power? So I would also fight for the rights of men as a feminist, just as I would fight for the rights of women.
Sure. Do you think women are happier than they were 40 years ago?
Here's the thing, even if it were true that women were, on average, happier 40 years ago, a claim that's highly debatable, let alone the causes, this wouldn't justify forcing all women back into the kitchen. You can't derive an ought from a happiness survey. I mean, should we also bring back leaded petrol because people were happier back when they had lead poisoning? The logic doesn't follow. So this has become a pattern, hasn't it? Every time Tilly tries to have a substantive discussion about women's roles, the actual topic that they're meant to be discussing, Charlie desperately yanks the steering wheel towards something else. First, it was prostates.
Can a woman have a prostate?
Then happiness surveys.
Do you think women are happier than they were 40 years ago?
Why can't he just tell Tilly what roles he expects women to have in society, and then have an argument about justifying it?
Do you think women are happier than they were 40 years ago?
I think I would have a few responses to that. I think that women report more stress and dissatisfaction today because, not because they have more rights or because of feminism, but because they're under dual pressure to both excel professionally and also because of the domestic labor in homes that is structured around outdated expectations. So, for example, studies like the OECD's Better Life Index show that women's life expectancy, education levels, professional achievements have risen in countries with higher gender inequality. So I would argue that what you're calling unhappiness is actually visibility, because now we hear women expressing dissatisfaction, whereas in the 50s, we prescribed them Valium and we lobotomized.
This is a devastating response that tackles Charlie's happiness question from multiple angles. First, the dual pressure point.
They're under dual pressure to both excel professionally and also because of the domestic labor in homes that is structured around outdated expectations.
This is exceptionally well documented in gender studies. Women are expected to excel in the workplace, partly because of housing costs that have skyrocketed so much that a single income household is nearly impossible, while still carrying most of the domestic burden. They're essentially working 2 full-time jobs. That would impact anyone's mental health and reported happiness levels. It's not feminism making women unhappy, it's the failure to update domestic expectations alongside workplace participation. But her second point about visibility is even more devastating.
What you're calling unhappiness is actually visibility, because now we hear women expressing dissatisfaction, whereas in the 50s, we prescribed them Valium and we lobotomized.
Are there now more unhappy women, or are we seeing more reports of unhappy women because they're finally allowed to express dissatisfaction without being diagnosed with female hysteria and institutionalized? Seriously, I don't think these facts are registered enough. Well into the 20th century, women displaying anxiety, irritability, or basically any deviation from submissive contentment could be diagnosed as hysterical. What's that? Too much appetite for sex? Hysteria. Not enough appetite for sex? Well, that's also hysteria. Tendency to cause trouble? Definitely hysteria. The treatments ranged from forced bed rest to lobotomies. It's not a surprise, then, that today, when we don't have such oppression, we see such reports. Another thing to consider is that this visibility phenomenon happens whenever marginalized groups gain acceptance. Take left-handedness. When religious conservatives stopped beating children for using their left hand, suddenly there was a surge in left-handed people. Was it an epidemic of leftness? No, it just rose to its natural rate of about 10% and then plateaued. The same pattern repeated in the 1990s when homosexuality became more accepted. Conservatives claimed that we were turning children gay, but in reality, the percentage simply rose to its natural level once people felt safe enough about being open. Now, today, we're seeing the exact exact same pattern with trans people. Conservatives call it an epidemic, and with autism.
This mythology that this is, that the autism epidemic is not real.
It's not that there's more of these people, it's that they're finally visible and counted, they're finally accepted. And, to an extent, our methodologies have evolved. So when Charlie points to unhappiness surveys, he's not comparing apples to apples. He's comparing women who can finally voice dissatisfaction to women who literally were lobotomized for doing so.
What you're calling unhappiness is actually visibility, because now we hear women expressing dissatisfaction, whereas in the 50s, we prescribed them Valium and we lobotomized.
Yeah. That's really rich. I didn't know women not to complain 50 years ago. That's funny.
This is an egregious example of a straw man fallacy, when someone misrepresents their opponent's argument to make it easier to attack. Tilly just offered a well-reasoned argument about visibility, backed by evidence about how women's dissatisfaction was medicalized and suppressed through forced drugs and lobotomies. She's making a sophisticated point about data collection and social acceptance of women's voices. And Charlie's response was, I didn't know that women were not complaining 50 years ago.
That's really rich. I didn't know women not to complain 50 years ago. That's funny.
That is not what she said, my dude, at all. She didn't say that women didn't complain. She said that their complaints were pathologized and silenced through medical violence.
Now we hear women expressing dissatisfaction, whereas in the 50s, we prescribed them Valium and we lobotomized.
But reducing her nuanced argument to women didn't complain makes Charlie sound sharp and witty to his base. Another lib owned, another feminist destroyed with facts and logic.
Facts don't care about your feelings.
It's the same performative smugness we saw with his earlier smirk about trans people. He's not interested in engaging with the actual argument. He's interested in scoring points. And the quickest way to score points is to pretend that your opponent said something much more stupid than they actually did.
That's really rich. I didn't know women not to complain 50 years ago. That's funny.
We've always been...
No, hold on a second. Why are suicide rates going up more for women?
I think that
Forget
encourages...
complaining. Materially, women are killing themselves more. Why is that?
And this is red herring number 3. First, it was define woman.
Can we both agree on what a woman is?
Then, are women happier?
Do you think women are happier than they were 40 years ago?
And now, what about suicide rates?
Why are suicide rates going up more for women?
Each pivot takes us further from Tilly's original question about women's role in society.
What should women's role in public and private life look like?
Why won't he answer the damn question? What is it, precisely, that Charlie thinks women should be doing with their lives? What roles does he demand that they have? He can't answer. He won't answer. But there's something far more insidious happening here. Charlie's implying that feminism causes female suicide, a false cause fallacy. This occurs when someone assumes that a correlation between two things means that one caused the other. An example would be noticing that as ice cream sales go up, so too do drowning deaths, and then concluding that ice cream causes drowning. You can't just assume that correlation equals causation. You need to rule out other factors, such as, in this case, that summer might have something to do with it. The burden of proof is on Charlie to show not just that suicide rates have increased, but that feminism specifically caused this change. But he doesn't even attempt to do this. He just throws out the statistics and expects Tilly to defend against his implied accusation. It is a brilliant rhetorical trap, if you fall for it. And here's what makes his argument even weaker. The claim that suicide rates today are higher is completely false. But do you know what? Two can play Charlie's correlation equals causation game. Female suicide rates in England and Wales peaked in the 1960s at 11.8 per 100,000 people. Today, they're at 5.7 per 100,000 people. In fact, the suicide rate among women has almost halved since 1981, when it was 10.5 per 100,000. Making this even worse for Charlie is that the lowest recorded suicide rates for both sexes in England and Wales have been in the 21st century. So when Charlie claims that women are materially killing themselves more, he's not just wrong, he's spectacularly, demonstrably wrong. The data shows the exact opposite of what he's claiming.
Materially, women are killing themselves more. Why is that?
I think that even if both men and women have become unhappier, men's suicide rates have risen as well, and that's also been exponential. Can you at least concede that feminism offers only one potential explanation? There could be also other explanations.
Understandably, Tilly has granted what we know is a false point about suicidality, but it's actually a brilliant move. She has effectively immediately flipped the burden of proof back to where it belongs, on Charlie. She's emphasizing that, even if the rates have gone up for men and women, Charlie still needs to demonstrate that feminism is the cause. He can't just assume it. He needs to demonstrate it.
Materially, women are killing themselves more. Why is that?
Today, there is absolutely zero peer-reviewed literature demonstrating a causal link between feminism and suicide rates. None. What the actual research shows is that suicide is influenced by complex, intersecting factors including economic stress like rising inequality and housing insecurity, social isolation and poor access to healthcare, discrimination especially against marginalized groups like LGBTQ+ people, digitalized stressors like social media harassment, and substance abuse combined with mental health stigma. The WHO's report emphasizes that suicide is rarely the result of a single factor, but rather driven by an interplay of psychological, social, biological, cultural, and environmental factors. Notice what's not on that list. Feminism, women having rights, equal pay legislation, the ability to open a bank without a husband's permission. Again, if we were to argue the way that Charlie does, drawing simplistic correlations, we could claim that feminism is responsible for saving thousands of lives by cutting suicide rates nearly in half. But that would be just as fallacious as his argument. The difference is, we're not the ones making wild claims without data. Charlie doesn't present any actual statistics, because when more savvy conservatives try this argument and cherry-pick data, anyone who actually analyzes the full picture can see that they are completely wrong.
Can you at least concede that feminism offers only one potential explanation? There could be also other explanations.
Of course, obviously, but feminism is the glaring thing in front of us, where we have fertility rates down, we have marriage rates down, we have unhappiness up, and we did something in the 1960s out of the universities of Bretty Friedan and Gloria Steinem and all these feminists that basically said, you're trapped in a home, go get a job, freeze your eggs, take birth control, and all of a sudden women are way unhappier than they were 40 years ago.
Now, it's worth noting that we're witnessing a Gish gallop, when someone throws out a rapid-fire series of claims without substantiating any of them. Fertility rates are down, marriage rates are down, unhappiness is up.
We have fertility rates down, we have marriage rates down, we have unhappiness up.
Women freezing eggs, birth control, 1960s feminism.
We did something in the 1960s out of the universities of Bretty Friedan and Gloria Steinem and all these feminists that basically said, you're trapped in a home, go get a job, freeze your eggs, take birth control.
It's a machine gun of unsubstantiated assertions designed to overwhelm rather than convince. Each of these claims would require careful analysis. Are fertility rates down because of feminism or because of economic factors? Are marriage rates down because women have choices now or because education has led to a reduction in religiosity? But Charlie doesn't pause to prove any of this. He just keeps firing, hoping the sheer volume of claims will substantiate for actual evidence. And he's not done. He continues.
I just have to ask the question, why is that? Is it working? And maybe there are biological differences between men and women that we should respect, and that deep down a lot of women want to get married and have children. In fact, we should applaud it and we should support it, and we should say it means nothing if you're gonna go be a CEO of some shoe company or be some banker in London. What matters if you raise children and you have something to pass down long after you're gone.
Here we see Charlie constructing a complete straw man of what feminism actually advocates. He's painting feminism as some kind of anti-motherhood movement that demands that women should abandon their biological desires to freeze their eggs and climb corporate ladders. But this is absolutely not what feminism has ever been about. Feminism recognizes that many women want children, and it applauds and supports those choices. That's fine. What it doesn't support is forcing all women into motherhood, whether they want it or not. It doesn't support teenage girls getting pregnant and being trapped in incompatible relationships forever because that's what traditional values demand. Feminism is about choice. It's about freedom. It's the radical idea that women should get to decide their own path, like men. But there's two other fallacies lurking in Charlie's Gish gallop. First, an appeal to nature. This occurs when someone claims that something is good or right simply because it's natural, or that something is bad or wrong just because it's unnatural. Like saying humans shouldn't fly in planes because we weren't born with wings, or medicine is wrong because disease is natural. When Charlie talks about women being made by God and needing to respect biological differences, he's suggesting that biology equals destiny.
There are biological differences between men and women that we should respect.
But just because women can have children doesn't mean they should or must. We don't say humans have legs, therefore everyone must become a runner. We don't say men have more upper body strength on average, therefore they must all become construction workers. But somehow, when it comes to women and reproduction, suddenly biological capability becomes moral imperative. Not everything natural is good. Disease, parasites, and dying in childbirth are natural too. And many good things are unnatural, like vaccines, glasses, and the very building Charlie is debating in. Whether something is moral or beneficial depends on evidence, not whether it exists in nature. The second fallacy is an appeal to tradition, when someone argues that something must be right simply because it's been done that way in the past. Like saying, we've always had slavery, therefore abolition is wrong. Charlie's entire argument rests on the idea that because women traditionally stayed at home, that's how it should remain. But tradition gave us slavery, it gave us bloodletting as medicine, it gave us burning women while accusing them of witchcraft. We've always done this is not an argument, it's an admission that you don't have an argument. Now, in terms of rhetoric, notice that Charlie drops names like Betty Friedan and Gloria Steinem, giving an air of authority as if he's actually read their work.
Of Betty Friedan and Gloria Steinem and all these feminists.
But if he had, he'd know that they never said don't have children. They said women should have options beyond only being mothers.
All these feminists that basically said you're trapped in a home, go get a job, freeze your eggs, take birth control.
There is a massive difference between you can be more than just a mother and you shouldn't be a mother. This is a colossal straw man dressed up in academic garb. And then there's his grand finale.
We should say it means nothing if you're going to go be a CEO of some shoe company or be some banker in London. What matters if you raise children and you have something to pass down long after you're gone.
Really? Nothing. You couldn't have both. So the female doctors saving lives, the female teachers educating the next generation, the female scientists advancing human knowledge, all of that means nothing.
It means nothing.
This isn't about respecting biological differences. It's about dismissing any woman whose contribution to society extends beyond reproduction.
What matters if you raise children and you have something to pass down long after you're gone.
I think I would bring 2 points to that. The first one is just really simple, which is that you can ascribe liberalism all you want as the cause of the unhappiness. I would argue something else. I would say that it's certain economic policy that has very little to do with the social acceptance of alternative lifestyles. I would say that we can recognize that income inequality across a vast swathe of Western countries has increased, which causes all kinds of social ills, a lack of social cohesion, housing price growth doesn't correspond with wage growth, monopolies increasingly become kind of emboldened to interfere with politics, and monopolies don't prioritize social health either.
Did you see Charlie's face during this response? Look, I'll put it on screen again. This is fascinating. Tilly is giving a nuanced, data-driven answer that actually addresses the real causes of social unhappiness. And Charlie, he's completely checked out. You can see it in his body language, the glazed eyes, the barely suppressed impatience. He's not listening, not considering, not engaging with any of the economic factors that she's presenting. He's just waiting to take his turn to speak. This is performance debate at its worst. Tilly's pointing to actual measurable economic factors, income inequality, housing crisis, wage stagnation, that research shows correlate with unhappiness.
We can recognize that income inequality across a vast swathe of Western countries has increased, which causes all kinds of social ills, a lack of social cohesion, housing price growth doesn't correspond with wage growth.
But Charlie doesn't care about the data or nuance or actual causes. He came with talking points about feminism ruining everything, and no amount of evidence is going to change that script.
Feminism is the glaring thing in front of us.
The visual cues are so obvious that it's comical. This isn't a conversation. It's two people taking turns making speeches, except one of them is actually responding to what the other says.
I think that those offer more compelling reasons for a decline in happiness than an increase in freedoms, because just one more thing, on an intuitive basis, generally speaking, people want more freedom, not less.
Okay, so if that's true, why is it? Do you agree that the happiest women of the West are married with kids?
And there it is, proof that Charlie didn't absorb a single word. Tilly just explained that happiness is influenced by complex, multifaceted economic and social factors. She's arguing that simple correlation doesn't equal causation, that you can't just point to one variable and blame everything on it.
Can you at least concede that feminism offers only one potential explanation?
Charlie's response is to completely ignore all of that and go right back to his one-dimensional talking point about married women being happier.
Do you agree that the happiest women in the West are married with kids?
But here's the thing. Even if we granted Charlie's premise that married women with children report higher happiness, which itself is a complex claim that requires nuance, so what? Pet owners report higher happiness than non-pet owners, but we don't mandate dog adoption. People who exercise regularly report higher happiness than those who don't, but we don't have mandatory gym sessions. People who live near nature report higher happiness than city dwellers, but we don't forcibly relocate everyone to the countryside. The entire point of freedom is letting people choose their own paths to happiness. Charlie hasn't done the work to substantiate his claim that feminism causes unhappiness. He's just thrown out a correlation and expected everyone to accept his preferred causation. Tilly's explaining that economic factors provide more compelling explanations, but Charlie can't hear her over the sound of his own agenda.
Okay, so if that's true, why is it? Do you agree that the happiest women in the West are married with kids?
I would have to look into it, but
Every
I think there are
study
certain
shows, right?
there are certain
and
studies
objectively
that
we know that, right? The women with kids are not the ones tearing down statues, right? They're the ones that actually have obligations.
tearing down statues correspond to some kind of smiles per capita data set that I wasn't aware of.
Again, it's a little bit of a...
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Tilly just exposed the absurdity of Charlie's entire argumentative method with one perfectly timed quip.
Does tearing down statues correspond to some kind of smiles per capita data set that I wasn't aware of?
She's highlighting exactly what he's been doing this entire debate, drawing bizarre correlations and pretending they mean something profound.
Do you agree that the happiest women in the West are married with kids?
But let's humour Charlie and unpack his logic, because it's even more ridiculous than it first appears. He's arguing that because married women with children self-report higher happiness, we should, what? Force all women into marriage and motherhood. That's like banning ice cream because people who eat it have higher drowning rates. They both peak in summer, Charlie. Correlation isn't causation. And then there's his truly bizarre pivot to statue tearing.
And objectively we know that, right? The women with kids are not the ones tearing down statues, right?
Apparently, in Charlie's mind, political activism means that you wouldn't destroy property under any circumstance. I mean, has he ever heard of the suffragettes? Those women who had children, households, and plenty of obligations, and they still fought tooth and nail for their rights. They smashed windows, chained themselves to railings, and yes, they would have absolutely torn down statues if it advanced their cause. Mary Wollstonecraft had children. Emmeline Parkhurst had 5. These women weren't childless radicals with nothing better to do. They were mothers, fighting for a better world for their daughters. But Charlie's so invested in his narrative that activist women must be miserable and childless that he's rewriting history in real time.
Women with kids are not the ones tearing down statues, right?
The audience applause says it all. They recognize that Tilly just demolished his entire argumentative framework with one simple question.
Does tearing down statues correspond to some kind of smiles per capita data set that I wasn't aware of?
Again, it's a little bit of a...
If tearing down statues correlates with unhappiness, where's the data? Oh right, there isn't any. Just like there's no data supporting his claim that feminism causes suicide or unhappiness. It's all just correlations strung together with conservative ideology in the hope that nobody would notice.
Again, it's a little bit of a one-liner. The happy and the grateful. The happy and the grateful usually don't go burn down Wendy's in their spare time, of which we saw in our country all throughout a single summer.
Oh, so now Charlie's concerned about one-liners. This is from a guy whose entire brand is built on trying to land one-liners, just like his earlier attempt of gotcha, you're a feminist who also defends men.
So you're a feminist that actually isn't just fighting for women, you're also fighting for men.
He lives for these moments, but when Tilly delivers one that actually exposes his logic, suddenly it's just a cheap one-liner.
It's a little bit of a one-liner.
And once again, Charlie reveals his historical ignorance. Throughout history, those fighting for their rights have had to make a scene. I wonder, Would Charlie say the same thing about the enslaved people who destroy property during rebellions? Would he condemn the working class men who smashed machinery during the Industrial Revolution to fight the class system that was crushing them? The Boston Tea Party was literally destroying property for political ends. Were those American revolutionaries just ungrateful and unhappy?
The happy and the grateful usually don't go burn down Wendy's in their spare time.
Time and time again, the comfortable always think that the oppressed should be more grateful, more patient, more quiet. But rights have never been won by asking politely. From here, Charlie then presses Tilly again on accepting his claim that women in the West who have children are happier than those who don't. And Tilly has this to say in response.
So I also don't think that happiness is a very good metric, and neither do you, because you think gay people shouldn't just pursue happiness by being gay. They have other moralistic considerations to be making.
This is how you expose hypocrisy. Tilly just exposed that Charlie doesn't actually care about happiness as a metric. He only cares about it when it supports his predetermined conclusions. When it comes to women, Charlie insists that we must follow the happiness data and structure society accordingly. Women with children are happier, so all women should have children. That is the implication.
What matters if you raise children and you have something to pass down long after you're gone.
But when it comes to gay people who report being happier when living openly, suddenly, Charlie discovers moralistic considerations that override happiness metrics.
You think gay people shouldn't just pursue happiness by being gay. They have other moralistic considerations to be making.
It's such a clean rhetorical kill shot. It's beautiful. She's using his own logic against him. If happiness is the ultimate metric for how people should live, then Charlie should support anything that makes people happier, including being openly gay. But of course, he doesn't, because his appeals to happiness data were never about actually maximizing human well-being. They were about finding statistics that support his existing worldview while ignoring ones that don't. Tilly just exposed the game. Charlie picks his position, then shops for data and logic to support it. When the data and logic contradicts his position, suddenly data and logic doesn't matter anymore. And Tilly isn't done. She follows up with this.
So I don't think smiles per capita is a particularly convincing way to measure whether or not we should encourage women to be autonomous. I think we should maximize agency within a fair system that has reasonable parameters because it's expedient, it's good for the economy, it's logical, it's the moral thing because if we can't prove the material harms, we shouldn't discourage it. And also self-reported studies is a really flawed way to do psychology. It's the week before my university exams right now, and I'm standing here explaining the basic methodology behind survey collection in sociology, which you don't even think is a real subject, to Charlie Kirk. If I took one of those surveys right now, I'd check extremely miserable, but so would a Palestinian child who's been torn to smithereens. How are we going to measure?
You would say extremely miserable?
No, I'm kind of making a joke.
What a retort. Tilly's making a fundamental point about research methodology that's apparently sailing right over Charlie's head. Happiness is relative, it's contextual, it's measured against personal baselines and immediate circumstances. Someone who's objectively worse off might report being happier because they've experienced worse, or because those around them have it worse. A millionaire who loses half their fortune might report misery, while someone escaping poverty might report joy, despite having far less. A student stressed about exams might check the same extremely miserable box as someone experiencing actual tragedy. That's why self-reporting happiness surveys are notoriously unreliable for making sweeping societal prescriptions.
If I took one of those surveys right now, I'd check extremely miserable, but so would a Palestinian child who's been torn to smithereens.
And this is basic psychology, like first year undergraduate stuff. But it's clearly too complex for Charlie, who only thinks in terms of simplistic correlations and gotcha statistics. He's so focused on his talking points that he can't grasp why comparing happiness scores across different populations with different baselines and expectations might be methodologically flawed.
Self-reported studies is a really flawed way to do psychology. It's the week before my university exams right now, and I'm standing here explaining the basic methodology behind survey collection in sociology, which you don't even think is a real subject, to Charlie Kirk.
The fact that Tilly has to explain this to him while stressed out about her own exams just adds another layer of absurdity. She's literally teaching him introductory research methods while he smugly insists that women should restructure their entire lives based on his misunderstandings of happiness surveys.
No, I mean, but seriously, like, but hold on. I mean, like, that's an important point, though, is that the women in the West have it the best in the world, and yet they're way unhappier than women of sub-Saharan Africa. There's something fundamentally wrong here, because the women of sub-Saharan Africa have something that a lot of women in the West do not have. The women in the West have cats, and they have good jobs. And the women of sub-Saharan Africa, they have a belief in the divine and they have kids. And maybe there's a biological undercurrent that is keeping a lot of women from realizing their full potential. And so without reading your phone and just connecting.
Oh my word. Charlie just made a claim so spectacularly wrong that it's actually, it's breathtaking. Cross-national happiness comparisons show the exact opposite of what he's claiming. This is demonstrably, verifiably false. The World Happiness Report of 2023, actual data rather than Charlie's feelings, consistently ranks sub-Saharan African nations at the bottom of the global happiness index. Countries like Zimbabwe, Rwanda, and Tanzania have far lower average life satisfaction scores than Western nations. Meanwhile, the happiest countries in the world are Finland, Denmark, Iceland, all Western nations with strong, very strong feminist movements and high gender equality. But Charlie doesn't care about actual data. He's too busy creating bizarre caricatures where Western women are defined by cats and good jobs, while African women are blissfully happy because of faith and children.
The women in the West have cats and they have good jobs, and the women of sub-Saharan Africa, they have a belief in the divine and they have kids.
It's not just offensive, it is statistically illiterate. And yet, suppose that Charlie was right. Well, you know by now, correlation doesn't equal causation. It's a false cause fallacy. Even if sub-Saharan African women were happier, and they're not, claiming it's because of religious faith and having children is the same nonsense logic he's been peddling all debate. He needs to demonstrate it. And do you know what? This right here is a mistake that gives away his game entirely. Put it this way. Charlie is so eager to make these causal leaps that he does it even when his basic facts are completely wrong. If he's this sloppy with fabricated data, then you know exactly how reckless his reasoning is when he accidentally stumbles upon real statistics. And as for the condescension dripping from...
And so without reading your phone and just connecting...
This is a subtle ad hominem, when someone attacks the person rather than their argument. Tilly's been systematically dismantling his points with data and logic, and Charlie's response is to imply that she's some disconnected Gen Z glued to her screen.
Connecting.
This is what desperation looks like. He's realizing that he's losing, both the crowd and the debate. The audience has already applauded Tilly's zingers. His statistics have been exposed as false. His logical contradictions are piling up. So he retorts to this passive-aggressive swipe, suggesting the university student who's teaching him basic research methodology is somehow the one who needs to connect.
Connecting.
Making things worse, suppose that Tilly was using her phone for notes, which she probably was. Why would that be a bad thing? We don't criticize debaters for bringing paper and pen, do we? If anything, it shows that they are taking notes, that they are listening carefully enough to track the opponent's arguments. It shows that they've come with actual points of their own, that they're not just going to be giving you their feelings and fabricated statistics.
We have unhappiness up. Why are suicide rates going up more for women? Women are way unhappier than they were 40 years ago. Women with kids are not the ones tearing down statues. All these feminists that basically said you're trapped in a home, go get a job, freeze your eggs, take birth control.
But no. In Charlie's world, being prepared is apparently a character flaw. You've got to wonder, would he have a go at his doctor or therapist for taking notes while he speaks to them? Anyhow, they go back and forth on this point for a bit, and then Tilly delivers this.
I would ask you, would you say that a sub-Saharan African woman who's experienced female genital mutilation and checks extremely happy in a survey, and I also would check extremely happy in a survey, who do you think would be objectively more happy, even if they both checked the same answer?
This is such a powerful illustration of why self-reported happiness is a flawed metric. Responses aren't straightforward measurements of well-being because of cultural adaptation, normalization of suffering, and lack of alternative experiences. Someone who's enduring trauma might report happiness because it's all they've ever known. Someone who's never experienced freedom might not know what they're missing. Tilly made this point earlier, but here she's really hammering it home with a visceral example.
No, again, so I fully, if you want to talk about how Islam mistreats women, we could talk all day long. I'm all for that.
My word, there is another red herring. Tilly was critiquing the limitations of self-reported happiness metrics using FGM as an example of normalized suffering.
Would you say that a sub-Saharan African woman who's experienced female genital mutilation and checks extremely happy in a survey, and I also would check extremely happy in a survey, who do you think would be objectively more happy, even if they both checked the same answer?
Charlie immediately pivots to Islam bashing, completely missing her methodological point.
If you want to talk about how Islam mistreats women, we could talk all day long. I'm all for that.
But here's what makes this deflection even more ridiculous. Charlie just spent several minutes claiming that sub-Saharan African African women are happier because of their belief in the divine.
The women in the West have cats and they have good jobs. And the women of Sub-Saharan Africa, they have a belief in the divine and they have kids.
Now he wants to attack Islam. I mean, does he not know that Christianity is the dominant religion in Sub-Saharan Africa, comprising about 62% of the population? Female genital mutilation isn't an Islamic practice, it's a cultural practice that predates both Islam and Christianity in the region. Both faiths have adherents who practice it, and both have adherents who condemn it. It's justified post hoc with various religious reasonings, but it's fundamentally a cultural phenomenon. So Charlie simultaneously wants to claim that Sub-Saharan African women are happier because of religious faith, while attacking Islam, not realizing that he's also talking about Christian women. The layers of ignorance here are astounding.
If you want to talk about how Islam mistreats women, we could talk all day long. Like, I'm all for that.
Me too.
Okay, good. So we agree.
Absolutely.
We actually have
agree on
agreement.
many things.
And we should shut off Muslim immigration to the UK, right? We totally agree.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
It jumped up a notch. It did, didn't it?
We started with what should women's role in society be, and somehow, through prostates, happiness surveys, suicide rates, statue tearing, Wendy's, and Sub-Saharan Africa, we've arrived at shutting off Muslim immigration to the UK.
What should women's role in public and private life look like, and what are the material benefits of that?
Can a woman have a prostate?
What should women's role in public and private life look like?
It's super easy. Like, can a woman have a prostate?
What should women's role in public and private life look like?
You think women are happier than they were 40 years ago?
What should women's role in public and private life look like?
Do you agree that the happiest women in the West are married with kids?
What should women's role in public and private life look like?
Why are suicide rates going up more for women?
What should women's role in public and private life look like?
Materially, women are killing themselves more. Why is that?
What should women's role in public and private life look like?
Women with kids are not the ones tearing down statues, right?
What should women's role in public and private life look like?
The happy and the grateful usually don't go burn down Wendy's in their spare time.
What should women's role in public and private life look like?
And the women of Sub-Saharan Africa, they have a belief in the divine and they have kids.
What should women's role in public and private life look like?
We should shut off Muslim immigration to the UK, right? We totally agree.
This is peak Charlie Kirk, and it's a clear representation of his debate style. He's not having a conversation, he's working through a checklist of conservative talking points. It doesn't matter what the topic is or how the discussion flows, he will find a way to hit every item on his list.
We should shut off Muslim immigration to the UK, right? We totally agree.
I think that all religious fundamentalism is bad, and if you take that logic, we should also not allow evangelical Christians into
Well,
the UK
okay,
either.
hold on. So hold on a second. Hold on.
Another zinger from Tilly. I told you that she's brilliant, didn't I? Christian fundamentalism has its own extensively documented issues with women's rights, including campaigns against reproductive rights, abortion bans, contraception restrictions, and opposition to LGBTQ+ rights. We're talking about violence at abortion clinics, murdered providers, and terror campaigns against LGBTQ+ individuals. Studies show that 40% of Christian nationalists support the idea that true patriots might need to resort to violence to save the country. That's 2.5 times higher than the general public. These beliefs strongly correlate with authoritarianism, anti-black racism, anti-immigration sentiment, and yes, anti-Muslim and anti-Semitic attitudes. But Charlie would never apply his own logic consistently. Religious fundamentalism is only bad when it's the other team's fundamentalism. His own side's extremists, well, that's just good old-fashioned Judeo-Christian values.
Hold on. So hold on a second. Hold on. That's funny. Hold on. Can you show me a single... Show me, what would your example, because I have 50, of a single Christian country that you would say mistreats women right now?
America.
Oh, really?
Yes.
We had a female woman vice president. We had a female vice president, a female speaker of the House. Women earn more than men in America.
Oh, this is rich. Charlie's using the "we had a female leader" defense. But by that logic, Pakistan must be a feminist paradise. They've had a female prime minister, don't you know? India has also had women in power, and so has Bangladesh. Are these suddenly bastions of women's rights? And let's talk about the female vice president Charlie's citing.
We had a female vice president.
This is the same Charlie Kirk who called Kamala Harris a DEI hire.
Kamala Harris is a JV player. She is a DEI pick. She was not selected because she's a good candidate.
Among other charming descriptions. The same Charlie who said, if you're a Christian that votes for Kamala Harris, you are voting for things that God hates.
If you're a Christian that votes for the Democrat Party, you are voting for things that God hates. That's between you and God.
And Kamala Harris is wired to be repulsed by the name of God.
Kamala Harris is wired to be repulsed by the name of God. She mocks God. Again, everything Democrats love, God hates.
But wait, it gets worse.
Women earn more than men in America.
This is just a flat out lie. Women in America earn less than men, about 15% less over a career. That means hundreds of thousands of dollars less in lifetime earnings, which translates to 30% less in pension and retirement income. Charlie's not just wrong, he's stating the exact opposite of reality. Again.
Women earn more than men in America.
And if we want to talk about how America treats women, let's look at the actual data. The US is the only wealthy country without federal guaranteed paid parental leave. And it has the highest maternal mortality rate among wealthy nations. But Tilly's not done. Once again, she takes Charlie's own metric and turns it against him.
In Rwanda, female representation in government supersedes the UK by quite a lot. Did women get treated better in Rwanda?
Okay, I might be super off this. Like, is Rwanda Islamic? Like, I'm not totally sure. I don't think it is. Like, is it? Like, I don't know, actually.
This is absolutely beautiful. Charlie has just argued that America can't be sexist because it had a female vice president from a party that he despises.
Everything that Democrats love, God hates.
So, Tilly brings up Rwanda, which has the highest percentage of women in parliament in the entire world, over 60%.
Did women get treated better in Rwanda?
By Charlie's own logic, then, Rwanda must be a feminist utopia. But what was his response? He didn't engage with the logic, he didn't address the contradiction. His only move was to desperately ask if Rwanda is Islamic, hoping he could somehow pin this on his favourite scapegoat.
Was Rwanda Islamic?
He's so locked into his Islam bad talking point that he can't even process that he's been hanged by his own logic. The stammering.
Like, I'm not totally sure. I don't think it is. Like, is it? Like, I don't know, actually.
Is Charlie's brain shortcutting in real time? He has no idea about Rwanda's religious demographics. It's about 90% Christian, by the way, but he's frantically hoping it's Muslim so he can salvage his argument.
Is it? Like, I don't know, actually.
So, once again, Tilly has taken Charlie's reasoning to its logical conclusion and shown how absurd it is. Female representation clearly doesn't equal good treatment of women. Otherwise, Rwanda would be a paradise. But Charlie can't acknowledge this because it would mean admitting that his metric is meaningless.
Is it? Like, I don't know, actually. It's not. So, again, we were just talking about Islam. It's a little bit of side note.
Speaking of side notes, just look at Tilly's face at this moment. It says everything. You can almost see the exact second she realizes that Charlie's not going to engage with her argument at all. He can't follow the dialectic, or refuses to. He's not interested in building on ideas, challenging them, or even understanding them. He's just here to repeat conservative talking points no matter what's actually being discussed.
It's not. So, again, we were just talking about Islam. It's a little bit of side note.
And there it is. Charlie trying desperately to save face. He's got caught in a massive logical contradiction. His own metric for evaluating women's treatment, female political representation,
We had a female vice president.
completely backfired when Tilly brought up Rwanda. Unable to defend his position or engage with the obvious flaw in his reasoning, he dismisses the entire humiliating exchange as a little bit of a side note.
We were just talking about Islam. It's a little bit of side note.
But this wasn't just a side note. It's a devastating exposure of his entire argumentative method. Tilly just proved that Charlie doesn't actually have any consistent principles for evaluating how societies treat women. He just has conclusions he wants to reach and will grab whatever statistics seem convenient in the moment. When those same statistics prove him wrong, suddenly it's all irrelevant.
It's a little bit of side note.
To put a name on it, this is a classic case of moving the goalposts, when someone changes the criteria for evidence after their original standard has been met. It's like saying, if you can run a mile in under 6 minutes, you're a great athlete. And then when someone does it, you change the condition to, well, actually, you need to run it in under 5 minutes. Or anyone who graduates from Cambridge is smart, but then when you meet a Cambridge grad that you don't like, suddenly declaring, well, grades don't really measure intelligence. Charlie just did exactly this. His goalpost was female political representation proves good treatment of women. That's why America having a female vice president supposedly proves the US doesn't mistreat women.
We had a female vice president.
But when Tilly points out that Rwanda has the world's highest female parliamentary representation,
In Rwanda, female representation in government supersedes the UK by quite a lot. Did women get treated better in Rwanda?
suddenly that goalpost shifts. Now representation doesn't count.
It's a little bit of side note.
The standard of evidence mysteriously changes the moment it stops supporting his argument.
I'm making a simple observation, which is objectively true regardless. The women of the West are miserable. and they're miserable for a reason. Because we've told them to suppress how they are made by God and pursue something else and get a bunch of trinkets and get a bunch of promotions, and they end up at 38 years old with a big flat in London, and they're miserable. And we should tell them to stop freezing their eggs and start finding their partner earlier and have lots of babies.
Notice that everything that Charlie just said is completely irrelevant to the exchange that just happened. Tilly made a specific point. Rwanda has more women in government than the UK or the US. By Charlie's own reasoning, that female political representation proves good treatment of women, Rwanda should be better for women than the West.
Do women get treated better in Rwanda?
When Charlie tried to deflect to Islam, he discovered Rwanda is majority Christian.
It's not. So again, we were just talking about Islam as a little bit of side note.
So what does he do? He completely abandons the discussion and retreats to his memorized talking points about Western women being miserable with their trinkets and big flats in London.
And they end up at 38 years old with a big flat in London, and they're miserable.
And notice the loaded language here, when someone uses emotionally charged words to manipulate rather than inform. Calling women's career achievements trinkets and promotions isn't a neutral description. It's deliberately dismissive language designed to minimize and mock.
And get a bunch of trinkets and get a bunch of promotions.
A woman's medical degree? It's just a trinket. Her position as a judge? Merely a promotion. Years of hard work and achievement? Worthless, apparently. This isn't accidental word choice. By reducing professional accomplishments to trinkets, a word associated with cheap, worthless decorations, Charlie's trying to make careers seem inherently meaningless compared to motherhood.
We should tell them to stop freezing their eggs and start finding their partner earlier and have lots of babies.
It's the rhetorical equivalent of calling someone's life work a hobby. But there's an even deeper problem with Charlie's framing. He's creating a false dichotomy when someone presents only two options when many more exist. It's like saying you can either be healthy or enjoy food, when obviously you can do both. Charlie's painting exactly two pictures. Miserable career women with cats and big flats.
And they end up at 38 years old with a big flat in London, and they're miserable.
Or happy married mothers with children.
We should tell them to stop freezing their eggs and start finding their partner earlier and have lots of babies.
That's it. Those are the only options in Charlie's world. But what about women who have successful careers and happy families? Or women who choose not to have children and are perfectly fulfilled? What about women who have children later after establishing careers? Or those who adopt or foster or mentor? What about women who find meaning in their careers serving others? And let's not forget the stay-at-home mothers who are miserable. By presenting only two extreme options, lonely cat lady or blissful trad wife, Charlie's trying to force a choice that doesn't reflect reality. Really, this is rhetorical cowardice of the highest order. He can't defend his position. He can't engage with the contradiction. He can't even acknowledge that his own metric just backfired spectacularly. So he simply pretends that the last 2 minutes didn't happen and launches into a pre-written speech about career women and egg freezing.
Objectively true regardless.
The objectively true claim is particularly rich, given that he's just spent several minutes spouting objectively false statements about women's earnings and happiness. But why let facts get in the way of a good sermon about women needing to have lots of babies?
Yeah, okay, I think I'd bring two just final points to this. First one is just really intuitive, right? Which is that if you actually care about women's happiness, then the solution is to structurally support them. That means universal childcare, shared legally enforceable parental leave, and in Nordic countries where women have high workforce participation and also some state support, they report higher life satisfaction than in more conservative countries, including America. So if your metric is happiness,
just use satisfaction surveys. You just told me they're BS.
So are satisfaction surveys bullshit or not? Because you told me they're bullshit.
Do you acknowledge satisfaction surveys or not? You just told me that they're BS. Do you think they're objective? We can use that as data?
Yeah. Look, either Charlie has the listening comprehension of a goldfish, or he's being deliberately obtuse. She's using his reasoning, not endorsing it herself. This is a basic debate tactic that Tilly's been masterfully employing throughout. She takes Charlie's preferred metric and shows where it actually leads. To Nordic countries with universal childcare and parental leave, not to conservative paradises. She's not saying that surveys are good data. She's saying that if we use Charlie's own chosen data, it proves the opposite of what he claims.
So are satisfaction surveys bullshit or not? Because you told me they're bullshit.
Do you acknowledge satisfaction surveys or not? You just told me that they're BS. Do you think they're objective? We can use that as data?
Notice how he cuts her off while she's trying to explain, again, that she's using his methodology, not hers. This, it seems to me, is either spectacularly bad faith or genuine inability to follow basic argumentation. When someone says, according to your logic, they're not endorsing that logic, they're testing it. It's an internal critique.
So if your metric is happiness,
I mean, suppose Charlie said that the Bible says X, and then Tilly responded by saying, well, the Bible also says Y, and then Charlie screamed, ha! See, you do believe in the Bible.
You guys are easy.
No, Charlie. She's showing the inconsistency in your framework. The fact that he can't grasp this basic argumentative structure after Tilly has patiently explained it multiple times suggests either willful ignorance or an actual inability to engage with logical reasoning. And either way, it is painful to watch. Anyhow, at this point, the conversation comes to an end, but I want to play Tilly's final words. Here they are.
okay, I think just one final thing, which is that in which case we get to a really interesting argument about what parts of womanhood can be demarcated to the social and what kinds of womanhood can be demarcated to the biological. So for example, my anatomy is demarcated to the biological, but the fact that I might potentially be a better nurturer than a man, I would demarcate that to the social, you might demarcate that to the biological, in which case we have differing moral scales of value. I would ask why we should necessarily prioritize your moral scale of value, which prioritizes things like the birth rate, when in actual fact there are various other moral scales of value. And if you yourself are a free market American, why is it the case that you would not, like the previous speaker noted,
I've already answered
extend personal freedoms towards all spheres, including a private sphere?
This is such a phenomenal closing point. She's exposing the fundamental hypocrisy at the heart of conservative ideology. These are the people who worship at the altar of the free market, who insist that government should never interfere with personal choice, who champion individual liberty above all else, except when it comes to women's bodies and lives and gay people, and you get the point. Then, suddenly, they're all about top-down control and social engineering. Charlie wants the government out of boardrooms, but into bedrooms. He wants maximal freedom for corporations, but minimum freedom for women. He'd defend to the death your right to exploit workers, but not your right to choose when or if you have children. And notice how Tilly lands exactly where she started, the complex interplay between biological and social aspects of womanhood. She began by asking about women's role in society, tried to have a nuanced discussion about how biology and culture interact, and despite Charlie's constant derailments about prostates and Muslims and Wendy's, she brings it full circle. That is what intellectual discipline looks like. While Charlie spent the entire debate running from topic to topic trying to score points, Tilly maintained her core thesis. Womanhood is multifaceted, combining biological reality with social constructions, and women deserve the freedom to navigate that complexity on their own terms. No amount of bad faith argument could shake her from her foundation.
I might be super off this. Like, is Rwanda Islamic? Like, I'm not totally sure. I don't think it is. Like, is it? Like, I don't know, actually. It's not. So, again, we were just talking about Islam. It's a little bit of a side note.
All right, so what exactly did we just witness? We watched a university student in the middle of exam week absolutely dismantle a professional political commentator using one of the oldest tricks in the philosophy playbook, and doing it with such wit and charm that she had the audience laughing along.
Women with kids are not the ones tearing down statues, right? They're the ones that actually have obligations.
Does tearing down statues correspond to some kind of smiles per capita data set that I wasn't aware of?
Again, it's like, it's a little bit of a one-liner.
Despite Charlie's constant attempts to derail the prostates, the happiness survey, the suicide statistics, the Muslims, the Wendy's,
Can a woman have a prostate?
Tilly kept dragging the conversation back to her original question about women's role in society. In and of itself, this is a brilliant tactic that forces the conversation to stay where it should, and if the opposition forces it off, then at least it's obvious to those watching what they're doing. But Tilly didn't just stay on track, she delivered one-liners that brutally landed.
All religious fundamentalism is bad, and if you take that logic, we should also not allow evangelical Christians into the debate either.
Hold on. So hold on a second. Hold on. That's funny. Hold on.
This line got the audience applause because in these debates, optics matter just as much, if not more, than facts. You need to win the crowd, not just the argument. Charlie knows it, and I'd wager that Tilly knows it too. Most crucially, though, Tilly deployed one devastating technique over and over. It's called the reductio ad absurdum. I know, it sounds like something that Voldemort would angrily yell. But it's just Latin, and it translates to reduction to the absurd. It's a form of indirect proof, where you assume a proposition is true, and then show that it leads to a contradiction or absurd consequences, thereby proving the proposition must be false. For instance, suppose that someone said that money always brings happiness. You might respond, by that logic, the richest person should be the happiest person alive, but many billionaires are miserable. Or if someone claimed natural is always better, you could say, well, arsenic is natural and vaccines are artificial, so should we keep poisoning ourselves and skip life-saving medicine? This technique has been devastating debate opponents for over 2,400 years, ever since ancient Greek philosophers like Socrates used it to expose flawed thinking. And it's so effective because you're not attacking your opponent's position from the outside. You're accepting their logic and following it to a faithful and natural conclusion. When that conclusion is absurd or contradicts with their other beliefs, they're trapped. They can't claim that you've misrepresented them because you're using their exact reasoning. They can't dismiss it as a different viewpoint because you've shown that their own logic leads somewhere they refuse to go. It's intellectual judo, using your opponent's force against them. They either have to admit that their principle is flawed or accept conclusions that they find repugnant. It's brilliant. There's no escape. I love it. It's one of my favorite techniques, and Tilly is really good at employing it. She executed the reductio perfectly multiple times. When Charlie claimed that female political representation proves good treatment of women, she brought up Rwanda.
Female vice president, a female speaker of the House.
In Rwanda, female representation in government supersedes the UK by quite a lot. Do women get treated better in Rwanda?
By his logic, Rwanda, with the world's highest female parliamentary representation, it must treat women better than America. The absurdity was obvious. When Charlie insisted that happiness surveys justify restricting women's choices, she pointed out,
so I also don't think that happiness is a very good metric, and neither do you, because you think gay people shouldn't just pursue happiness by being gay. They have other moralistic considerations to be making.
By his logic, he should support gay rights since gay people report being happier when living openly. But of course he doesn't. When Charlie claimed we should use happiness data to structure society, she noted,
in Nordic countries where women have high workforce participation and also some state support, they report higher life satisfaction than in more conservative countries, including America. So if your metric is happiness...
By his logic, we should adopt Nordic-style socialist policies since these countries score highest on happiness. Not quite what he had in mind. Each time, she took Charlie's own reasoning and showed where it actually leads.
Okay, good. So we agree.
Absolutely,
we actually
we
have
agree on
agreement.
many things.
And we should shut off Muslim immigration to the UK, right? We totally agree.
I think that all religious fundamentalism is bad, and if you take that logic, we should also not allow evangelical Christians into the UK either.
Hold on. So hold on a second. Hold on.
It's intellectually devastating because it forces someone to either abandon their argument or embrace conclusions they hate. But here's what made Tilly's performance truly masterful. She did all this while maintaining grace and humor. She explained basic methodology to someone who should know better.
Self-reported studies is a really flawed way to do psychology. It's the week before my university exams right now, and I'm standing here explaining the basic methodology behind survey collection in sociology, which you don't even think is a real subject, to Charlie Kirk.
She endured constant interruptions and topic changes.
So women can have prostates. Got it. Okay.
She faced bad faith arguments and outright lies about statistics.
All these feminists that basically said you're trapped in a home, go get a job, freeze your eggs, take birth control.
And throughout all of it, she kept her composure and her wit, and demonstrated that if either of them would be better off back at home making a sandwich, it's Charlie, though I'd bet he'd screw that up as well.
You guys are easy.
This debate wasn't just about women's roles or happiness metrics or any of the dozen topics that Charlie frantically cycled through. It was about what happens when someone who actually understands logic and argumentation faces someone who's only learned to perform for cameras. Tilly came to have an intellectual exchange. Charlie came with his talking points. And in the end, only one of them succeeded.
It's a little bit of a one-liner.
As always, thank you kindly for the view. I really do appreciate it. I read all of your comments. Please do subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this. Let me know what kind of things you'd like me to cover. That would be really useful as well. And if you have the ability, I know times are hard, then please consider supporting us on Patreon. We can create many more videos just like this, but we just don't have the financial backing. So if you can help out and you want to promote reason and logic and consistency and rationality, then honestly, any amount will help. Thank you.